This is Old America Journal, and today we're going back to the most important room in the American home of 1967. Not the living room, not the garage, the kitchen, your mother's kitchen, the room she ran with quiet authority, where she stood for hours every day making things the family took entirely for granted, using 9 tools that did exactly what she needed them to do. By the time we reach number 9, you're going to hear about something so connected to her hands that you'll remember exactly where she kept it. Number 1. The Stovetop percolator. Not a drip machine. A pot that sat on the burner, with a tube inside that pushed boiling water up and over the coffee grounds in a slow, repetitive cycle. It made a sound before anyone came downstairs, a low, rhythmic bubble. The sound of the morning already underway without you. The smell was different from any coffee made any other way. Stronger, slightly bitter, the kind of smell that meant the day had officially started. Your mother didn't press a button. She watched the color through the glass knob on the lid and pulled the pot off the burner at exactly the right moment. That judgment lived in her hands, not in a timer. Mr. Coffee arrived in 1972. Within 10 years, the percolator had moved from counter to cabinet to garage sale table. The coffee changed. The morning changed with it. The percolator filled the kitchen with smell. The next thing filled it with sound. Number 2. The Rotary egg beater. 2 metal whisks, a gear, a handle on the side that you turned by hand. No cord, no motor. You held it with one hand and cranked with the other. Your mother could beat egg whites to stiff peaks with one of these. Her arm knew exactly what the right resistance felt like after hundreds of repetitions. The sound changed as the mixture thickened, a metallic shimmer that told you from the other room what she was making and how far along she was. When the electric hand mixer arrived, the rotary beater went into a drawer where it stayed for 30 years before someone finally threw it out. From the beater to something that required no movement at all, just patience in the right container. Number 3. The Jello mold. A metal form, ring-shaped, fish-shaped, flower-shaped, kept for one purpose, producing a molded gelatin dish that held its shape long enough for everyone to see it. Your mother made Jello salads for company. She made them the night before. The question the next day was always whether the mold would release cleanly. The moment of unmolding was its own small drama. Warm water over the outside, plate on top, flip, wait. If it held, she carried it to the table with the composure of someone who had expected this all along. If it didn't, the cleanup happened quietly. Jello molds fell out of fashion in the 1980s when food writers decided they were embarrassing. The tradition went with them. The mold was for special occasions. The next thing was for every single morning. Number 4. Wax paper. A roll in a box with a serrated edge kept in a specific drawer where it always was. She used it for everything, wrapping school lunch sandwiches, lining cake pans, rolling out pie crust, covering bowls in the refrigerator. The school lunch sandwich wrapped in wax paper was a specific object, not in a bag, a package, folded at the ends the way she always folded it, that you unwrapped at the cafeteria table and left in a small waxy pile beside your milk carton. Plastic wrap and Ziploc bags arrived through the 1970s. Wax paper didn't disappear, it retreated to the back of the drawer, and most people under 50 have never used it for anything. Wax paper was every day. The next thing came out only when the occasion required it. Number 5. The pressure cooker. Heavy aluminum, a lid that locked with clamps, and a weighted valve on top that rocked and hissed when pressure reached the right level. It cooked in 40 minutes, what would otherwise take 3 hours. Children were told not to touch it, specifically, not as a general warning. The hissing valve was the sound of something serious, and you gave it space. Pot roast, navy beans, chicken that fell off the bone. The crock pot arrived in 1971 and offered the same results without the drama. The pressure cooker moved to the back of the cabinet within a decade. Tell me in the comments, which of these was in your mother's kitchen? Which one do you remember most clearly? Not the object, but what she was making with it. I read every single one. Number 6, the meat grinder. Cast iron or aluminum, clamped to the edge of the counter. Meat went in the top, handle turned on the side, ground meat came out the front in slow, even strands. Your mother bought less expensive cuts and ground them herself. She knew exactly what was in the meat because she had put it there. Children were allowed to turn the handle, which felt like a significant responsibility. Supermarkets began selling pre-ground beef in standardized packages through the 1960s. It was faster. The grinder went into the back of the cabinet. Most families stopped grinding their own meat and forgot why they had started. The grinder required effort. The next thing required ceremony. Number 7, the cake decorator set. A metal tube with a plunger and interchangeable tips, including stars, rounds, leaves, and petals. You filled it with frosting and squeezed. Every birthday cake in the family had been decorated by her specific hand. The roses looked a certain way. The borders were a certain width. These were things she developed over years, not things she learned from a book. Grocery store sheet cakes became more accessible through the 1980s. The decorator set moved to the back of the cabinet. Some mothers still have theirs. The frosting roses are unmistakable. The decorator was for celebrations. The next thing was for quiet evenings at the kitchen table after dinner. Number 8, the S&H Green Stamps redemption book. Small, with a green cover, and pages sized to fit the stamps exactly. You got stamps at the grocery store, a certain number per dollar spent, and licked them into the book in rows. In 1967, S&H printed more stamps than the United States Postal Service. Your mother kept the books in the kitchen drawer. Filling them was something she did at the table after dinner with a damp sponge. Children helped sometimes, pressing stamps into rows while the evening settled. The program declined in the 1980s. The redemption centers closed. The drawer where the books were kept holds something else now. The green stamps required patience. The last thing required something that was never written down. Number 9, the cast iron skillet. Black, heavy, seasoned over years until the surface was as smooth as any non-stick coating ever produced. It had been on the stove before you were born. She fried chicken in it, made cornbread going directly from stovetop to oven, scrambled eggs on Sunday mornings, sliding almost frictionlessly across a surface built through hundreds of meals. Cast iron requires maintenance, proper drying, re-seasoning with oil. She knew how to do all of this, not because she had read about it, but because someone had shown her. The skillet held the record of that knowledge in its surface. Non-stick pans arrived through the 1960s and 1970s. Many families switched. Some of the cast iron was discarded by people who didn't know what they were throwing away. But plenty survived. Cast iron from 1967 is still in use today, still cooking. The seasoning that took 30 years to build is still there. 9 things. The percolator that started the morning before anyone came downstairs. The egg beater her arm knew by feel. The Jello mold that held its shape, or didn't. The wax paper that wrapped 1,000 school lunches. The pressure cooker that hissed and should not be touched. The meat grinder on the edge of the counter. The cake decorator that made birthdays look like birthdays. The green stamps book in the kitchen drawer. And the cast iron skillet that is probably still somewhere, still black, still good. None of these things asked for attention. They were simply present, in her hands, in the background of every meal that fed the family. Tell me in the comments, what do you remember about your mother's kitchen? Not what she cooked, what she used, what was on her counter, what was in her drawer, what she reached for without looking. We don't just remember the objects, we remember the life around them. Subscribe, because there is a lot more of this country left to remember.